Our borders are broken. Our cities are burning. What's happening in American streets right now will make your blood boil. Gang members who should have been deported years ago are terrorizing community. Politicians are protecting criminals instead of citizens. MS-13 is recruiting in our schools while Democrats call them good for the community. The border crisis and crime wave are not separate problems. They are the same problem, and now finally someone is doing something about it. Tom Homan's warning echoing across sanctuary cities. Stephen Miller is exposing the hypocrisy. Trump's team is launching the largest deportation operation in history. The gangs thought they owned our streets. They thought wrong, and the hammer is about to drop. Washington, D.C. is getting cleaned up. And wait till you find out what's going to happen in Chicago very, very soon. And when gangs control your streets and borders collapse, you do need a backup plan. My Patriot Supply's 3-month emergency food kit, now $100 off, becomes your lifeline when law and order breaks down. So picture the supply chains disrupted by border chaos, stores looted by gang violence, police overwhelmed. Well, you will have 2,000 calories daily for 90 days while others panic. Real meals in indestructible buckets, 25-year shelf life, made in America, no MSG, just security. When criminals run wild and government fails, food independence keeps your family safe. Fast, free shipping plus disaster replacement guarantee. Lock in your protection at preparewithgary.com. It's linked down below today. Okay, so I was just at a event with Donald Trump Jr. and speaking with a lot of people there about what's going on in Chicago. President Trump, as you know, he's cleaning up Washington, D.C., and just trying to gauge what people are hearing, what they're thinking with respect to Donald Trump bringing in the National Guard to Chicago. Is it a giant troll just to trigger Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker, or is it actually going to happen? Well, one insider I spoke with actually dropped a date, and she said September 18th is when the National Guard is going to come into Chicago. So now we have some clips we're going to be playing for you here. But this just in, okay, this is from ABC7. This was published just a couple hours ago. Great Lakes Naval Base in North Chicago is getting ready to house ICE agents. DHS contacted the base and informed them they will be taking over part of the base. North Chicago borders Waukegan and Gurnee, both loaded with illegal workers. Chicagoans are begging for the National Guard. So we are learning now that it is coming. And for what I'm learning is that it's not just ICE agents, but the National Guard is going to be here, and they're going to be. This is probably it's not far from Chicago, really, but they could easily go back and forth and protect Chicago. Listen.
False flag operation.
City is preparing for what amounts to the unknown at this point, but we have now learned that Naval Station Great Lakes is preparing to host federal immigration agents. Will the National Guard be joining them? At this point, officials here just don't know, but they are preparing for that possibility.
And again, yes, preparing for the possibility, because what the insiders are saying is that they will be there September 18th.
The naval base confirming today that the Department of Homeland Security has asked for limited support in the form of infrastructure and facilities, along with other logistical needs, to support DHS operations related to immigration enforcement.
We think that's a smokescreen. There's no reason to use a naval base for immigration enforcement. We think that if they do show up under that premise, that will be basically a false flag operation. That'll be a way for them to amass National Guard troops.
Today, the Johnson administration held meetings with groups of alders to brief them on the city's preparations in case the National Guard is deployed to Chicago. The police superintendent saying the department will remain ready for whatever.
We could get information right now about one particular thing, and then if this thing happens, if we see federal agents come here, if we see the National Guard, it could be completely different from what we originally thought. So we have to be prepared around those things.
The naval base is in Congressman Brad Schneider's district. He's concerned about how it might be used.
It is an essential component of the military preparedness and security of our nation, and we should be focused on making sure that they have the resources they need and nothing interrupts their mission.
Congressman Mike Quigley, after a speech to the City Club that some saw as a precursor to a campaign for mayor, said the National Guard is not going to make Chicago safer.
It concerns me that it sends a terrible message. There's a reason that the business community, the convention...
Sends a terrible message. Yeah, it sends actually a good message that Donald Trump cares. And the message that they're afraid of is that it's going to expose the failure of Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker in protecting the people in Chicago. That's why Quigley is freaking out.
Community and local law enforcement doesn't want this to happen. It sends us in the wrong direction.
The mayor said this morning that there's still been no communication from the White House, and Alderman Brian Hopkins said during his briefing many people wanted to know how much advance warning Chicago might get if the Guard does come here. The answer? He is preparing for what amounts to the...
Well, what is P. Ray Easley talking about? If you don't know who she is running for Congress. She is the founder and chair of Chicago Red, Fox News contributor, OANN fan favorite, muse to President Trump, Queen MAGA of Chicago, future Congresswoman of Illinois' 7th District. Now, here she is on One America News, and let's go to the Fox clip first because I think this is great.
Don't want help in Chicago. Does Brandon Johnson speak for Chicagoans? You see it as tyranny. You don't want help in Chicago?
He doesn't speak for us at all. He's speaking for the people that he represents, which is the Chicago Teachers Union and the Democratic Socialists of America. The citizens of the city of Chicago want safety and security. We're paying lots of property taxes to live in this great city, and our mayor has funneled our money to an illegal international criminal organization for them to bring them here and take our money. So we are very happy that the president is here. Thank you so much, President Trump, for hearing us, and we can't wait until we get justice in this city. However, we're asking for 2 prosecutors for every troop that he brings, because the real justice is found in prosecuting those who use the legislation to steal our tax money.
Does Brandon Johnson speak for Chicagoans? You see it as-
if you don't know, I've known her for several years, and she's been at the forefront of turning Chicago red. She does great work. Here's her cut on One America News.
Talking with these folks. I know you're not a fan of Mr. Let's Go Brandon. I don't think you and I really went after Pritzker too much. He's usually too busy at the subway grabbing a sub. But I don't think they want Donald Trump and the troops or the federal officers. But you've been there your whole life. You've been out there running Chicago Red the last couple of years to get Trump supporters out to vote in 24. Now you're running for Congress. You were on the streets. You were talking with these folks. What does P. Ray Easley see out there and say about some federal help to crack down on crime in your beloved city?
People are so happy, Dan. First off, hey, how you doing?
How you doing? Good.
Yes, but the people are elated. The city of Chicago has been asking for federal troops to come here since at least the 1970s, based on the archives that I've read, for the exact same reasons, and that's because we can't get justice out of the Cook County courts. In the city of Chicago, if the police department is doing a good job, shout out to CPD, they're not the problem. The problem happens in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, where they're pleading people, and then the Cook County judges are letting them out of jail. They found 5 guys in the car last week with almost 90 rounds of ammunition, and one judge put them in jail. They went back to court the next week, and she let everybody out. So now they can go and complete the hit that they got caught doing. It's not fair. But what? Yeah, they're not telling the truth. But I'm going to give you a scoop. I don't know if I've shared this with you, but about a month ago, I was at LaFollette Park, which is in the Austin community where both Brandon and I live. I was sitting there with a friend of mine. We were actually drinking juice out of these little cups that he bought for us. And the police drove past and said, no drinking in the park. Now, behind us is a massive soccer tournament going on. So I said, why aren't you back there talking to the people drinking the Modelo's? And he told me, we don't bother them. We try not to bother them because we know that if we arrest them, they'll get flagged in the system for immigration. And we don't want that for them. So they're not even counting the crime that the illegals are doing. Yes, I have a witness who can corroborate this story. They are cooking the books. And this is why we need someone independent of the Cook County judicial system to come in and give us justice. And that's Donald Trump and the federal government.
I know you're not.
That is on the horizon. Well, okay, we have more. Let's see. Okay, I think we just covered that clip here. Okay, Governor Pritzker and Brandon Johnson. This is 2 hours ago. are ranting over President Trump considering bringing in the National Guard to stop killings and crime in Chicago, but had zero problems with calling them in to ensure no crimes were committed at their DNC convention. Illinois National Guard deployed to assist Chicago police for DNC. August 18th, 2024, almost a year ago. No problem then, but now it's a big problem. Checking in with Stephen Miller at the White House, talking about that gangbanger Kilmer Abrego Garcia going to Uganda.
World also tell us now. So the point about Uganda, you just have to marvel at this. The same left-wing NGOs who tell us that we should open our borders to all the poor countries of the world also tell us that it would be unfair, improper to have anybody live in those countries. Well, if those countries don't have good systems of law and good systems of governance, then why would we want to have open migration from those countries? So these two propositions are in complete conflict. But more fundamentally, remember, Garcia has said he doesn't want to go back home to El Salvador. That's what he said. So we're honoring that request by providing him with an alternate place to live. We're not a travel booking agency. It's not our job to say to illegal alien terrorists, pick your favorite destination in the world and we'll send you a charter jet there. We have countries that have very graciously agreed to help resettle nationals from other countries, which is a great benefit to the United States. And obviously that's something that Garcia is eligible for. Now, so the point about the...
He's eligible for it. Gotta love Stephen Miller. Here's more, talking about the National Guard.
Every American city should be safe and free from this organized, horrific, bloody street violence that we have tolerated for too long. The Democrat Party as an institution at every level, its judges, its lawyers, its community activists, and its politicians exist to serve these criminal thugs. We see it here in D.C. We talk to the cops. They say, we're not allowed to arrest anybody, and then when we do arrest somebody, then they're immediately bailed out, they're immediately released, they're immediately set free. We arrest them again, they're back on the street again, and what do? They kill, they attack, they rob, they rape. Why would we put up with this? Right? These are society destroyers. This is a simple choice. You either side with civilization or you side with anarchy and violence. And so President Trump is proud to be using federal law enforcement and our National Guard to make this city safe and peaceful for Americans, and he stands ready to help and assist any community that wishes to be liberated from these criminal elements that are such a dire threat to the freedom and tranquility of the American people. Every American...
Stephen Miller on point as always. Let's check in here on that. The defund the police movement is dead, even in Chicago, apparently. They state here, a poll shows that one, high crime worries Chicagoan, especially among blacks and Hispanics. Whites are least affected by crime, stridently anti-federal intervention. But 75% of Chicagoans want more cops. 73% of Chicagoans want more cops. Meanwhile, Brandon Johnson can't even answer the question. Let's check in.
70% officials feel about the president's purported plan to send the National Guard here to help fight crime in Chicago. But how do ordinary Chicagoans feel? Well, a new poll just out today is giving us a glimpse. It is done by M3 Strategies and sponsored by the group Law and Order PAC. And joining us now is Mark Batnick from the pollster M3 Strategies. Mark, thanks for being with us. So the top line here, according to your poll, 70% of Chicagoans oppose sending the Army here, 65% oppose Trump sending the National Guard. Did those results surprise you at all?
Yeah, those results didn't surprise me, but what really surprised me was the racial divide. I mean, you definitely saw an increase, whether it be, the Army, the National Guard, ICE, or the FBI. You saw an increase among African Americans and Hispanics wanting more help versus whites in the poll.
And let's look at that demographic breakdown. So you talked about that, and in fact, Hispanics seem to be most in favor of bringing in some kind of federal intervention. You're listing all the different possibilities of federal help: Army, National Guard. Obviously, ATF, DEA, FBI, far less controversial, and those federal agencies do have jurisdiction to come and do their area of crime fighting here. But what do you make of the fact that Hispanics, more so than whites or even African Americans, are in favor?
Well, it probably just speaks to the divide that we have in our city in terms of different communities and different neighborhoods. Hispanics probably don't have the same amount of, I don't want to read too much into the data, but Hispanics don't typically have the same amount of angst towards the police, but they are probably feeling crime in a greater way, so they're more likely to trust the government on crime. But I do think it's interesting to note that African Americans still support doing things more than the whites in the city do. I think the biggest surprising crosstab that I saw was the fact that a plurality of Hispanics actually want ICE increased in numbers in the neighborhoods.
Wow.
That is interesting. Yeah, we're looking at that statistic there, about 49%. And you'd think a lot of the anti-ICE protests are organized by immigration groups that represent largely Hispanic populations, but the community very divided there. One thing it seems like the communities aren't so divided on is more Chicago police officers among black and Hispanic voters. That number was in the 80th percentile in terms of supporting more police officers, which maybe goes against the narrative that those communities are against the police.
Correct. I mean, I think one of the things that is clear in this poll is across the board, people want more police on the streets. Whether you're black, Hispanic, or white, you certainly want. It's 86% for African Americans, 82% for Hispanics, 64% for whites. Not as high of a total for whites, but still a strong majority. So across the board, it's 75% of Chicago residents would like to see the Chicago Police Department hire more police officers and put them on the street. I do think...
and they may just get the National Guard instead. Now, let's keep tracking here. We have this from Tom Homan talking about what happens if you are in the country illegally.
Executive orders on the reason we have the most secure border in the history of this nation is because of the work of the men and women in the Border Patrol securing that border. Yep. President Trump's executive orders on remain in Mexico, ending catch and release, the third safe country agreements. Yep. But a big part of that success on the border is because we're showing the world there's consequences. If you're in the country illegally, you committed a crime, you're a public safety threat, we're going to find you, we're going to deport you. That message around the world helps give us the most secure border in this history. The reason
most secure border in history, cities becoming safer. You know, here's more from Stephen Miller. The same left-wing NGOs who tell us we should open our borders to poor countries also tell us it would be unfair and improper to deport anyone to live. What?
It would be Uganda. You just have to marvel at this.
Oh, we just played that clip. Okay, sorry. Let's check in with the other one we've got lined up for you here. You can't have nice things in New York City. Oh, I don't know what's going on here, but it doesn't look like it's going to be good. What? Oh, my goodness. Windshields smashed one after another. Just random violence on the streets. Random destruction, public destruction. Huh. Here is Secretary Burgum explaining how President Trump is empowering the U.S. Park Police will help lead to sustained safety in Washington, D.C.
Are you going to be able to keep this going even after the National Guard goes home?
Well, absolutely, Dana. We will be able to keep it going, and that's because President Trump has empowered the U.S. Park Police. This is the foundation of law enforcement in Washington, D.C. This is a group that was created by George Washington in 1791. They're the oldest uniformed law enforcement group in the country. Founded by George Washington, re-empowered by Donald J. Trump. And now that the handcuffs have been taken off the police, so to speak, in terms of things like no pursuit, they're allowed to pursue criminals. I mean, just a basic part of law enforcement. And now the handcuffs are going on the criminals as opposed to going on the police. And I'd say that, the crime statistics are down, as you heard from Carolyn, but two things are up. Restaurant reservations are up, and morale among police is way, way up. And I would just say if there's anybody working in a metro in this country where they've been defunded, demoralized, not supported by their mayors or their council. We're hiring in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Park Police would love to have you join our ranks. We've got open positions and increased funding coming from the White House, and this is going to be a sustainable, durable solution for our nation's capital.
Are you going to
keep Washington, D.C. beautiful? Here's more from Stephen Miller with his hit with Laura Ingraham.
An issue. Well, look, Laura, we've seen the polling. This is a 99 to 1% issue. In other words, 99% of the public says crime is either a problem or a major problem in their community. Only 1% of the country says crime is not a problem in our nation's major cities. Think about that for a second. Democrats have chosen a 1% issue. And over 80% of the country says crime is a major problem. President Trump has shown in just the last 2 weeks in Washington, D.C., that if you have the willpower and the strength, that you can break the back of these criminal gangs. There's been a steeper drop in crime in D.C., as the mayor herself has acknowledged, than any city has seen in American history over just the last 2 weeks. Meanwhile, compare that to Chicago, where last weekend, 34 Chicagoans were shot, multiple were killed, and among the dead, a 5-year-old boy gunned down by gang violence in that city. That is the Democrat policy. Bloodshed, gang violence, and suffering. President Trump and Republicans are offering no crime, security, and peace.
So buckle up, Chicago, because this may be the scene coming soon. Great Lakes, Illinois. Possible National Guard deployment coming very soon. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. So this is ground zero for America's survival. When Democrats defend MS-13 as good for the community, when sanctuary cities protect killers over kids, when left-wing NGOs demand open borders and then cry about deportations, we've reached a breaking point. Now, these aren't separate crises. The border chaos feeds the crime wave. Gang members pour in, recruit our children, terrorize our neighborhoods. But the tide is turning. President Trump, he has already laid out the blueprint. We're seeing it in Washington, D.C. And that blueprint is being spread across the country. And it appears as Chicago is the next target to clean up. Tom Homan, what is he doing? He's promising ironclad. If you are here illegally committing crimes, we will find you. We will deport you. Stephen Miller exposing their con game. We're not a travel agency for terrorists picking vacation spots. Trump's using federal law enforcement and National Guard to liberate American cities from gang control. No more catch and release. No more sanctuary predators. Sanctuary for predators. This is a 99% issue. Americans want safety. Politicians protect criminals. So here's the question. Should sanctuary cities lose all federal funding until they cooperate with deportations? Drop a yes or no. Sound off below. Let's continue the conversation. And you can gear up with some Next News merch and show where you stand.